Welcome, everyone, to tonight's Wednesday Night Live show. Our guest tonight is Jim McDonald. Jim is the writer and editor of vaping360.com, and he's also a board member of CASA. Jim is joining us today to talk about one of his latest articles in Vaping 360. FDA tobacco official will be the new Truth Initiative CEO. Welcome to the Jim. Tim's already going thumbs down. Welcome to the show, Jim. We're glad that you came back. You know what? I checked. It has been exactly 1 year since you've been on the show. Today was your 1 year anniversary of being on the show.
We timed it perfectly.
Couldn't ask for a better timing.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, well, we're glad you're here. But before we get into our guests, let's say hello to my co-host team here. Allison will try to be back because she had to run into some. She ran into some problems with her son's car. She'll be back on when she can. And Tim is back. Tim, how's your week going, buddy?
It has just been a fantastic week so far. I've been balancing work with pleasure, so to speak. So I have some company in town who I'm having a great time with. So, you got to balance life, right? You got to do some advocacy and you got to go see the sites. So I've had a pretty normal week, I guess you could say. So I don't have any fun stories. I mean, I could tell you about all the stuff that I did, but you guys be like,
I have a question.
Say that for a beer,
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Because this is a big deal when someone from outside your location comes to visit. Where is the place you take somebody for the first time when they come to Georgia?
Well, that depends on who it is and what their agenda is when they get here.
What's the hot spot in Georgia? They got to see it.
I think if I had to give my pick, I would say a really cool place to go is the Botanical Gardens downtown.
There you go.
I mean, it's very diverse. It's got a little something for everybody. There's some they have right now. They've got a thing called, the theme is called Trolls. It's a traveling art show. And so basically there's this guy from, I believe he's from Denmark or something. And he makes, out of reclaimed wood, he makes these massive trolls. I mean, they're like 2.5 stories tall. And they're like, they tucked them away in the gardens out in the woods and stuff. And so while you get to go walk around and see all the different exhibits and stuff, then you get to find these cool trolls kind of like hiding out in the woods and stuff, and they're ominous. Yeah, it was really cool. So I would say there was definitely like World of Coke. You got to do World of Coke. You got to go see where, we are technically the home of Coca-Cola,
right?
And the aquarium. We have yet to do that. We're going to do that on Friday. But Botanical Gardens, definitely a cool place. Yep.
How about the Fulton County Courthouse?
Sure.
That's number 3 on the list.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was in the top 10. Yeah. Well, we're saving the best for last, Jim. So
yeah.
No, when I lived in Atlanta, I took company to Piedmont Park. I'd pack sandwiches, and we just run around the park, and that was back in 1998, that was a big deal.
So to your point, Philip, Stone Mountain is definitely a must see. Piedmont Park, Stone Mountain, that area down there. You got to go to the top of Stone Mountain and see the 360-degree view of the Atlanta and all the suburbs. So definitely,
absolutely.
And Philip, how's your week going, buddy?
It's just amazing. No, maybe not quite amazing. We are, we're moving, and we have a new house, and we have architects and contractors and plans, and it's unbearably wonderful. Yeah, it's fantastic. Anyway, right. Well, comparing bids and all that good stuff. I probably shouldn't say all these things, but anyway, it's a lot of fun. It's I can't like I've been laughing all week, but no, it's good to get these things taken care of once and for all. And Deirdre's gonna be back later tonight, and can't wait to see her.
Nice.
That's it.
And our guest, Jim, how's your week going, buddy?
Vaping 360 is converting the back end of its website. We're shifting from WordPress to another program. It's basically like a proprietary. Anyway, it's hard to explain, but it's just like one clusterfuck after another.
Yeah,
I'm familiar with the WordPress. That can be a clusterfuck sometimes itself.
Well, we're getting rid of WordPress, but
yeah, that's new technology and new apps, new programs. Every time I update something, they change it, and I'll go. I know where the button is, but I go hit that button. It's no longer there anymore because they moved it somewhere else because somebody complained about it.
See, I don't really know anything about the technical aspects of building a website or anything like that. All I know is what they tell me, which isn't much. And it's just kind of a nightmare. Anyway, since they started doing this, I've had to kind of get involved in non-writing aspects of the website more.
So at midnight when they have issues, now they can call you for technical support.
Well, they're in Germany, so
I imagine they best not call Jim for
midnight for me. It's 6 in the morning there.
I have an inkling what WordPress is, but just enough to where I can sympathize with your plight.
I'm just learning how to use WordPress, and we're kissing it goodbye. So
yeah, as soon as you get used to one thing, they give you another thing.
Yeah. Tim, you know what time this is, Tim?
I do know what time it is, and I think it's time to say, hey, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of the Wednesday Night Live show. That's my game show host introduction there. Yeah, I don't know that I'll ever have a career in game show hosting, but if I had one to pick from, I think I would want to do $100,000 Pyramid. I don't know. There's just something intriguing about that show. But let's say hello to all the lovely people in the chat right now. Mallory Gates, always wonderful to see you. Thanks for coming back and joining us. Pam Spraggins, lovely to see you, dear. Curtis Clemens, the man, is in the house. Actually, it's cool. Curtis got in here early, so we're going to have lots of interesting conversations, people. Steve's Vapes, good to see you, brother. How you doing, man? Good to see you. Addy Tooney, the man, he's in the house. We got Rifleman with 2 R's. Rifleman. You have to roll your R's for that name. Rifleman, good to see you. How are you? I know I saw Mark Sliss in here. I did see his name slide in. There he is right there. Hola, everyone. Mark Sliss is in the house, everybody. Good to see you, Mark. Great to have you here. Let's keep on scrolling. There's me, that troll. James R. in the house. The pirate is present. Who else we got here? Let's see. And that's it for now. I know we got 13 eyeballs watching us, so there's plenty of cool people here.
Some of the people like to hide in the background.
And that's okay. That's all right.
Well, Jim, like I was saying, it was exactly 1 year today you were on the show, so it was pretty awesome that it fell on this day. So I'm glad you're here with us. And we like to start out. I'm sure you've been watching, so we like to start off with some easy, relaxing questions. So, are you ready for your first 2 fun questions?
Sure, knock yourselves out.
All right, your first job, and did you quit and get fired?
Well, I delivered newspapers when I was like 12 or 13.
We all did it.
Pretty sure I quit.
Yeah.
The first job that, aside from that, I worked in a grocery store, doing various things, a small grocery store. And I quit. And
you quit. In style, or did you give notice? No, you didn't slam a door and say, "I'm out of here."
No, those people were friends with my mother. So.
Yeah, you got to
burn bridges, man. Can't burn bridges.
Can't burn it.
But the job I had after that in a restaurant, I quit in spectacular fashion.
Yeah.
On Mother's Day, I was a busboy. On Mother's Day, with the other 2 busboys, we all walked out
Ooh.
So later, the owner of the restaurant was bussing tables.
That is
You
like
organized a strike, Jim?
that's what I was gonna say.
It was just like, yo, walk out. That's
It was time to go. That guy was a jerk.
You
Yeah.
couldn't pick the worst day for a restaurant to walk for the bus boys to walk out. Mother's Day, full house.
There were people lined up outside for a table, and
I worked in a restaurant, so I know Mother's Day and Valentine's Day are two big days for restaurants, and those are the 2 days you don't want to lose your staff.
yeah.
All right, here's the big question, the big one. You might upset 50% of the people on the panel here and 50% out there. Pineapple on pizza, yes or no, Jim?
No, hell no.
Oh, yeah, Phillip.
God bless you, Jim. Well done. Well done. This is really important to John. You know that you know.
We get
This is Philly.
excited.
He's just like, yes, a brother, you know, with someone I can talk to.
I could eat it if I had to, but I certainly wouldn't, you know.
Now we'll get into our real questions and why you're here, and we're going to discuss your recent article on Vaping 360. And my first question for you is, for obvious reason, this community has a tendency to focus on the negative when we see a position like this being taken by someone from the FDA. Is there anything positive whatsoever from this move? I know like I said, we always focus on the negative, but is there anything positive that may come from this?
I mean, Kathy Crosby's not at the FDA anymore.
Right. That's it.
You had to dig real deep for that one. I can tell.
I don't think it matters who's running the Truth Initiative.
Were you hoping for someone, someone who wasn't a Robin Caval a clone, essentially?
Well, I guess so, but I didn't have any expectation that it wouldn't, that they wouldn't pick somebody awful.
Sure.
For me, I look at her background. I mean, she's a very intelligent woman, and she's been involved in a lot of things when it comes with the FDA and some of the other things that she's been involved with, especially in the advertising portion of it. She knows how to touch people and get people's attention. You don't worry about that whatsoever?
I don't worry about it.
Yeah. Is there anything positive? I'm sorry. Is there anything
similar background to Robin Koval? So I mean, they're both from the advertising world. They're, I don't think that it's going to make Truth Initiative more effective as an anti-vaping organization. I don't think it'll make any difference whatsoever.
Okay. All right, Timmy.
Well, with that said, do you think that that they will ratchet things up and maybe take a different angle, maybe try to come at us a little bit harder, being that she's transitioned from the FDA, or do you think it'll just stay consistent messaging? Do you think they'll change their strategy?
I think they started doing that before they announced her. They came out with that report in July called I had it up in Game Changer. That's essentially they announced that they're going to shift their strategy to eliminating nicotine consumer products altogether. So I just put it in the chat for you guys. I don't know if you want to share it, but that's their goal, is to basically a slow motion prohibition.
Yeah.
Of all nicotine products.
All in the name of children.
Well, they hate them in general, but yeah, that's the best way to couch that stuff, because it tends to get everybody agrees. Oh, it's children, Jesus,
Yeah, I think they use that as sort of the stepping stone to kind of, create the trench line to, push their messaging. Obviously, bleeding hearts, they'll think, oh, well, if our children are in danger, then it surely must be bad. So it is sort of one-way street messaging period. I agree.
Yeah, and it's the hook that works with people of every political stripe.
Sure.
So
Yeah. Well, we'll have to wait and see where this eventually goes.
Well, at least I didn't see the word abolition anywhere in the opening paragraph. I
right.
guess that's something, right?
I
Isn't it?
don't
I
know if
really
they don't use they take great pains to explain that it's not prohibition because it's going to happen slowly.
Chip away at the stone, right?
You'll have plenty of time to get used to the world with no nicotine.
And go ahead.
Ruth Malone's crushed that we're not, hearkening, back to the days of slavery where people were, enslaved by nicotine, obviously. I read that paper that she put in the Journal of Tobacco Control years ago, and I think I've never been as shocked, floored, and just disgusted ever before or since. I mean,
that's how you can justify, bans of products that people like by saying, well, you don't really like it. You're just a slave to it. You're an addict. So
pretty despicable.
Yeah, take away people's agency and you can take away everything else.
If we're the slaves, and I wonder what that makes Ruth.
She's the protector of the slaves.
Breaker of chains, Ruth Malone. Yeah, please go ahead.
She's the John Brown of the 21st century.
Philip, do you have a question, Philip?
Question for Jim. Jim, you are a fantastic writer. I'm really it's a pleasure to finally get to meet you. And your articles over the years are they're so good and they're so informative for I think you're very fond of saying you write for the community, for the THR and vaping community, but they're very dense, and a lot of the subjects you get into, a lot about regulation, a lot about these agencies, these for example, the Truth Initiative. When you started writing, where did you decide to start writing full time about tobacco harm reduction and about the state of THR around the world? Essentially, is you're covering.
Really found me. I started vaping and I got involved with ECF, the e-cigarette forum, but I just wrote about vaping. I didn't write about politics or any of that stuff. And then later on, when I was interested in that stuff, my friend who I met through ECF, Jeremy Mann, had started working for Vaping 360, and he came looking for me and asked if I wanted to write about news. And so I said, sure, why not? And I did. I started doing that. It's like 7 years ago now.
Yeah, I've talked to Jeremy. He's an amazing guy and someone who knows a lot about everything. But yeah, he's a good guy. So it was all the people who were first on e-cigarette forum. I was on there for a while. I think someone who does reviews for you now, Anthony Victor, is someone that I always paid attention to, and he wrote reviews. He had spreadsheets with just different color codes for what he thought of this product and that product, and the coil. I mean, everything. The guy was just extraordinarily thorough, and I think he actually did a few videos too. I mean, here's the guy who could tell you everything you ever want to know about temp control and temperature coefficients and resistance, all that crap. But yeah, he was amazing. I think it's really great that he's working or that he's writing for Vaping 360 now.
I think Jeremy found him too. I was really on ECF just for a couple of years, I started vaping in late 2012. So a couple of years from there, and then I unfortunately haven't kept up with ECF since then, but Jeremy did, and he recruited some other people from ECF that came to work for Vaping 360. Anthony, you're right. He does know everything about the products, which is good because I don't know anything about them.
Yeah.
So.
All right, Jim, I have a question for you about her. Is she someone that is going to sit down ever with anybody in our advocacy department? Like say Gregory or
The Truth Initiative CEO?
Yes, Kathy.
Oh,
Kathy Crosby.
She might, but I mean, this is a private organization that
Right.
has their own mission. They don't, owe anybody any meetings, or, they're not going to negotiate with anybody for policy because they don't make policy.
They don't.
It's not a government agency. It's just
no, but it's someone that would be beneficial to our cause. And someone an ear to listen. No.
Yeah. Well, she's dead set against our cause.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. Is she someone that would sit down and listen? Take the time to listen.
I mean, she might pretend to listen. I don't think that she would actually take seriously anything. Remember, we're the slaves.
Well, that's where I'm getting at. I feel like we're in a situation where no one wants to sit down and listen to us. Granted, I understand that changing someone's opinion isn't easy, especially these people. They already set on a certain goal, and that is, completely destroying this industry and getting rid of it, making it vanish. But I just feel like if we had an opportunity to sit down with someone and actually get their ear for an hour or hour and a half, it would not only benefit us, but it would maybe get us some media attention, get the word out that, hey, the Truth Initiative sat down with American Vapor Association or sat down with CASA.
Well, I think that the Truth Initiative probably sends people to e-cigarette forum. To e-cigarette summit, which is the big annual meeting in Washington. So, I mean, they're willing to pretend to have a public discussion about these topics, but I don't think that they're going to change their position. Yeah. It's not going to happen quickly. There are well-known people in tobacco control who are sympathetic to vaping, and they aren't changing these people's minds. Ken Warner isn't changing anybody's mind, and so I don't know that I am.
I think he answered that question already, and Addie. How did Jim start his career in writing?
Yeah, from ECF to Vaping 360.
That was your first writing gig? I could have sworn you seemed like somebody who covered the Tigers for years prior to that, or wrote a sports column.
I had him as a sports writer at first. He's got that sports writer's look. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, like fat and sunburned. No. I've never written professionally since my 20s, which was 40 years ago.
Yeah.
When I wrote some music reviews and articles about music in the 80s. So I started doing that, and then I wasn't making any money. So I took a job to make some money in retail, and then I was good at that.
Guilty.
And I worked in retail for 40 years.
Nice.
Or over 40 years.
Timmy disappeared, but Timmy was up. Timmy, where are you, Tim? Since Tim is busy, I'll throw you out one of our fun questions.
I have to tell you, I feel much better about the stint in retail. Michelle at Hollister, Jim in retail, me at Abercrombie. I feel much better now. Just had to get that out. I really do.
Yeah.
Hey. I worked at Budget Rent-A-Car and washed cars. That was my first job. Let's see here. Let's go with that.
Did you get fired?
No, I got promoted.
There you go.
That's the worst thing that could
I
happen
thought
to
it
you.
happened.
It was the worst. Yeah.
You're like, fire me, please.
What was your favorite line in any movie, Jim?
God, there's so many lines. I don't know if I can come up with one. Leave the gun, take the cannoli.
Hey, Paisan, that's mine.
Did you guys talk before the show, huh? Is that what you did? Is that what you did? Don't lie to me. Don't lie to me.
There was no coordination at all.
Timmy, you're up, buddy.
Yeah, so I was going to ask. I mean, obviously, Jim, you're deeply informed, and a lot of what you write is certainly in our corner. I mean, in defense of the vaping industry and tobacco harm reduction overall. So, I mean, your messaging is fantastic. We read it, and we're applauding and jumping up and down and reading lots of wonderful commentary that echo our sentiments. Do you feel as though your writing has somehow been able to permeate outside the bubble of the vaping industry and the community, and that you do somehow bend an ear from people who might want to look at vaping from a different perspective?
No.
Yeah.
No, and I never really tried to do that. I mean, I've certainly done my bit, like testifying at hearings and stuff like that, but no, I mean, I don't think anybody's coming to Vaping 360 for that purpose anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think us as a community, we would certainly leverage the articles that you publish to try to pass on and spread information so people can kind of see the other side of the fence, right? Because most of the general public, or at least the people who would be maybe not understand what vaping is, or have been misled by a lot of the misinformation that's pushed out by the Play It Like Truth Initiative, Campaign for Tobacco Free Kids. I mean, they have this very liberal messaging where they can kind of almost say whatever they want to scare the general public into thinking that we're going to get brain worms, turn into devils, hair is going to fall out, all that stuff. I mean, they can paint the most doom and gloom picture. So when people want to come to us and question us, we certainly direct them to your articles to get some more factual information, to actually see some truth amidst the smoke and mirrors of the Truth Initiative. So I was just curious if you've had any direct feedback from someone who's like, man, I didn't really understand that about vaping, or I didn't really know that's what these federal agencies or these other organizations. I'm just wondering if you've ever been approached or commended on opening their eyes a little.
No, not really. And I'll tell you why. I don't think that people who are skeptical about vaping but interested are going to Vaping 360 as a source for unbiased information.
Sure.
And I don't write unbiased information. I have a point of view, and I think even in my newsiest articles, I think it comes through that I lean in one direction on these arguments.
Right.
So I'd like to tell you that, I've probably changed more people's minds as like individuals on Twitter, and that's few and far between. So
not necessarily.
Well, no, for people that I know for a fact change their mind about something, it's not very common. And I haven't really tried to do it in a long time, because I don't think going one-on-one with somebody on Twitter is an effective way of changing the public's opinion on vaping.
Well, just so you know, when you type in vaping news on Google, guess what comes up first?
Oh, yeah. We're popular, but it's mainly among vapors. It's not like people outside of vaping are flocking to Vaping 360 to learn the facts. They think that we're going to be pro vaping, and they're right. We are.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, a follow up to Tim's question: how do you change that? How do you get that person to come to click on Vaping 360?
I don't think we have that intention. I don't have that intention. I think that those people should find a source that's more. They should go to CASA, or they should go and read the article by the 15 past presidents of SRNT. There are a lot of sources of good information about vaping that are not by somebody who writes for a website with vaping in the title. So, I mean, I don't know how to change it, but I don't think I'm changing it at Vaping 360.
I think it bears mentioning that you are a board member of CASA. Are you not still?
I am.
No, I think I've been a member of CASA as long as I can remember, and
Yeah, me too.
it's a long time. I think the articles you write do make our slacktivism more intelligent. I think we could be more intelligent slacktivists.
I mean, I think that so my articles have gotten better over the years. They were awful in the beginning. They were really, really awful. And if you've ever done anything, but writing definitely is included, and you have any sense of any self-critical attitude, you can barely stand looking at what you did like a month ago or a year ago. But my stuff from 7 years ago was really, really bad. And I've gotten better through the years. So, I mean, I think that you could look at my articles now. Let's say you were somebody who was, opposed to vaping under any circumstance, and you can at least see that they're written. I at least tell you what the opponents are thinking, even though I may not give them a good representative view, but it's better than it used to be. I'm not sure where I was going with this.
Yeah,
you were talking about how it's very painful to look back at the writing you did 7 years ago, and you've come a long way. I look at tweets that I sent out there a year ago, and I'm devastated.
Oh, yeah.
It's painful.
Everything's embarrassing from.
Well, it's just if you want to communicate effectively, if you want to try and make a point, let's just say there was a time when I believed in the power of multiple hashtags. Maybe that was maybe a mistake. There were fewer words than
hashtags. They're getting away from hashtags now.
I think they're getting away from just about everything that makes any damn sense, to be quite honest.
Well,
if you have a big enough following, you can almost avoid the hashtags all whatsoever. I mean, but then you kind of keeping yourself, unfortunately, in that bubble, and that's the bubble I think we need to get out and have the non-smoker actually take a deep look into what vaping is truly about, instead of just reading clickbait. And I know that's a tough thing to happen, but it seems like when you talk to all the vapors, even on this show or on any group page, the bubble comes up all the time. We're in a bubble. We're just talking to ourselves. And I was hoping to hear something a little bit different from you as a journalist on an attempt to get outside that bubble and try to bring in that non-smoker, because without that non-smoker, this industry, I'm not going to say is dead, but it won't be what it was.
So I think that what you've got to understand is that my goal and Vaping 360's goal is something else altogether.
Right.
Than to get outside of the bubble. We're trying to make.
Well, you do have sections where you talk about potential side effects of vaping, the 9 pros and cons of vaping. These are articles that the non-smoker that's outside of our community should be reading, whether they get it from Vaping 360, CASA, or fucking Grim Green's page. It's still something.
Yeah, but that's stuff that's intended for people who are thinking about vaping, who haven't written it, who haven't.
Maybe you guys should change your attitude then.
Yeah, maybe. But there's also the point of view that the vapors within the bubble need to be more intelligent.
Yeah, I agree.
True. I agree with you there. Because we get caught doing the clickbait thing ourselves. I've noticed I fall into that sometimes. I'll see an article and I think just from reading, the headline, that I know exactly what that article is going to be about, and then I read it and I realize, hey, that had nothing to do with what the clickbait was. But yeah, that's to me, that's the frustration I'm at, because I feel like it's
Well,
the same thing for the last 10, 12 years. I've been doing this for quite some time and been involved in vaping, and I have helped people outside of the bubble and come in and accept what we're doing and showing them that it works. But it just seems like I'm not
yeah.
pointing fingers to journalists or bloggers out there, but it just seems that you guys have fallen into that little world and just accepted it and said,
I
"We're
haven't fallen into anything. This is what I intended to do, and I'm doing it.
you, not
So I'm just telling you,
yeah,
it's not a matter of trying to get outside the bubble for me.
yeah,
I
But
think one of the things that you do that's very important is you cannot possibly express yourself in any way that is not exactly who you are. You are going to say exactly what's on your mind to whomever the hell is asking, and that is that's a powerful thing, because believe it or not, you have the ear of a lot of people in tobacco growth. Cliff Douglas, for example, he
well,
takes notice of. I'm sorry.
Cliff lives across town from me.
yeah.
I
Well,
knew there was something
that's,
about
yeah,
that you guys were together behind the
exactly what
scenes.
Philip is saying. The way you write, and you stated in your bio that you're someone that's not pro vaping, not anti vaping. You're sharing your thoughts and opinions. You're a perfect person to hopefully get outside the bubble, because you're not. You are a vapor, but you understand there are issues to vaping that may affect certain individuals or people down the road. So the way you write is somebody that I think the outside non-smoker who should be reading. You see where I'm getting at?
I guess, but I don't see how they're going to read me if I'm writing for Vaping 360, which is a vaping website.
Right.
I
Uh,
think what people ought to do if they want to get outside of the bubble is get outside the fucking bubble.
Yeah.
Spend their time writing letters to legislators and going to hearings. And these hearings happen and nobody's there except two business owners.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I feel like that trend changed though over the years. I think I feel like between like 2017 and 2019, when it seemed to be kind of hitting kind of fast and hard, when a lot of the municipal governments were trying to institute bans, and when we kind of had the we vape we vote movement and all that stuff, it seemed like vapors were far more motivated to kind of be persistent with that, showing up at hearings and at least saying they object to whatever
Well,
bill was
there
trying
have
to be
certainly
passed.
been good periods and bad periods,
Yeah.
and certain things get more attention than others, and sometimes it's really good, but by and large, there's not a lot of. I don't think as many vapors now as 10 years ago consider themselves part of a movement or a community.
Yeah.
true.
And part of that's just because it's grown so much. You know, it's always 3 or 5% of whatever group you're talking about that does all the work. That
Yeah,
goes. But
I think
when
I think
people,
a majority of them just. I think a majority of them is just like, oh, it's not going nowhere. I'm cool. I can still get my stuff. Yeah, you're
yeah,
exactly.
and all that's another thing too is
Yeah,
I think there's been like too many threats of Armageddon, and Armageddon's never come, that people, have a hard time maintaining that level of intensity for a long period of time. And I understand that. And I understand people getting burned out on it too.
Yeah.
I totally feel that way a lot of the time. And, it's amazing to me the people who are just able to maintain that for years and years and years. But I don't think that we do a very good job of recruiting new people into the fold and teaching them what's important and how to go about fighting these things.
Yeah, we're kind of stuck in that situation where if we do bring in new people, if they're a younger generation, we get shit on that. If it's an older generation, we get shit on that. So it's difficult subject or I have this advocacy to get into, because it just seems like, oh, if we start getting people in their mid-20s to come in, we addicted them, nicotine addicted them. They got started. They're hooked. It's not helping them. They're just hooked on this product. If we get the older people in, it's just mind-boggling. I want to go ahead and ask you a fun question.
Well, I want to add something to that. It's the young people who are going to change things. So whether anybody likes it or not that they're vaping, they are vaping. And people between 20 and 30 are vaping twice as much or 3 or 4 times as much as they're smoking. So it's those people who are going to grow up, take over the public offices, and they're the ones who are going to be making policy 10 years from now, 20 years from now. And it's important that they have a balanced view of the issue. And I think it's more likely that they will, because they know people who vape.
Yeah. If you could put any franchise restaurant in your house, what would it be, Jim?
Taco Bell.
Taco Bell. Yeah.
Wait, can I put Chipotle here?
Does Chipotle have breakfast?
Waffle House.
Yeah, I don't think I need any of it for breakfast.
I'm a big Taco Bell fan myself, Jim. So I agree with you. That's my go-to. Would be probably Taco Bell. Hey, they got breakfast and coffee now, so it's a win-win. I can wake up and have a breakfast burrito and a cup of coffee.
And
I enjoy a Mexican pizza as much as the next guy, but I want to see 50. I really, really do.
Oh man, 50's nothing. I passed 50 a long time ago.
Yeah, but you look good. You look marvelous. But
Philip, I am going to make Philip do a whole show as Fernando. Philip is going to do the whole show as Fernando one of these days, right, Philip?
You're gonna make the French Canadian Jewish guy do Billy Crystal doing like a Spanish,
yes.
Like it's like Leisure Suit Larry and Land of the Lounge Lizards. Only it's just
Look marvelous, darling.
We'll dedicate a show to impressions. We can do that at some point. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? But I think what I was gonna say is I think actually no, continue.
If you let me get you at the one question here, and then we'll get back to it. This is a vaping show, so this question's about flavors. If you could remove one popular flavor, Jim, what would it be? What's the one you hate?
What do you mean?
Flavor.
I don't know. I don't like anything that's menthol or ice or anything like that. So
menthol, anything menthol.
Pretty much all the Elf bars were just a no-go for you.
Oh yeah, I can't do the disposables at all. So, or anything nicotine salts. It just makes me hack my guts out.
So even I'm doing research here. So even this guy makes you hack and just
if it's got salts.
It's just the Vuse rich tobacco, which is very much inferior to the golden tobacco, which is not great to begin with, but it's not the worst. I
can vape Vuse a little bit, but
the menthol is a little much. It's funny how people who talk about menthol, who want to ban menthol, talk about it like it's something that enabled people to smoke more or vape more because it wasn't harsh. I'm like, have you ever tried a bloody like a Marlboro menthol or cooler bloody like Newport? Those were the most. I smoked 2.5 packs of Marlboro Red Label mediums. They were back in the day. Yeah. I couldn't get through a Marlboro menthol without just wanting to throw my guts.
I think that the menthol taste in cigarettes is like incredibly harsh. I couldn't take it. So that whole thing about it it smooths out the taste of tobacco or whatever. What's the exact line that they use?
They use many lines.
No, it's something the taste of tobacco. Anyway,
it masks the harshness.
masks the
Yeah.
harshness
Right.
of tobacco.
They always say that. I cannot
It makes it
understand
more
how these people got to be 16 and then get run over by a bus. But yeah, have they ever smoked a menthol cigarette, a full flavor menthol cigarette?
Yeah.
You've got Marlboro Reds versus Marlboro Menthols. I will take a pack of Reds any day over.
So smoking anything is an incredibly harsh experience. It's very, very powerful, very visceral. I mean, when that smoke hits your lungs, it's bad. You know it's bad for you. Even if you're 15, that's part of the excitement of it. It's just it's a terrible thing to have in your lungs. And you get used to it, but it still feels, dirty and foreign when you inhale it.
Yeah.
Vaping is just the worst vape in the world. Is not even in the same ballpark as smoke.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, my ex, she liked Camel Crushes, and she liked that little pop.
Never had one.
And what she would say was she liked that because at the end she would pop that, and she thought it was refreshing her breath, like it was mouthwash. And I was like, keep in mind she was blonde, but I was just like,
I'm blonde too.
When
smoke a cigarette, you could chug a gallon of mouthwash.
I mean, you could the entire aisle of Listerine at the drugstore. It's not going to make any damn difference. Did you explain to her? Did the blonde wear off a bit? Did you explain to her you're not helping?
Yeah, when she finished, I was like, huh? What? She's like, yeah, it just cleans your breath. It gets that. I go, no.
It might clean it for her,
Eventually, maybe
No, from inside it seems clean, but out here it's not clean.
She's like, I don't know. Right when I get to the end, I pop it. I don't pop it until right at the end. So the last two drags, she thought she was getting this, a blast of Listerine shot into her. I was like, no.
I never had one of those. I never tried one of those.
No, she
So
loved
when
them.
she hit the filter, she'd crack the flavor pellet inside, and she'd walk away with. In her mind, she had minty, fresh breath, and at some point, the honeymoon was over, and you had to say, "No, dear, I'm sorry. We need to have a talk."
Yeah, no, you still smell like a cigarette, sweetheart. Yeah, no, it was hilarious. I was always telling, and she was a Camel smoker like me, so we both smoked the same brand for forever since we were married. But then, as soon as those came out, she was just like, "Oh, that's cool, that's neat," and they kind of sold it as that, though. Camel kind of sold it as a refresher, like it was going to, refresh your breath and get that.
Well, of course, they're going to push a product where they want you to buy more of it. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I started out as just like a Marlboro Red, Marlboro Light, Camels, the basic fare in terms of cigarettes, because that's that was what was in my vernacular of friends. That's what was surrounding me. That slowly did transition to menthol. Like I remember my first experience with a menthol was the Salem cigarette. We were at Tyson's Corner Mall and we went to go see a movie. And I was still kind of in that early phase of onboarding smoking in general. Like I never up to that point had my own pack. I wasn't like sneaking around mom and dad. Of course I was sneaking around mom and dad, but that first menthol one was a horrible experience. I mean, it resulted in me heaving in the middle of the movie, which was not, it was quite embarrassing, to say the least. But then I slowly over time transitioned to menthol, and then it made it really hard for me to kind of go back to smoking regular cigarettes, just because they all tasted like dirt to me. Like you'd go to bum one from a friend and you'd be like, yeah, can I get an extra one? I'm out or whatever. And they're like, oh, I got Marlboro Lights. And I'm like, beggars can't be choosers at that point in time. But I transitioned to full menthol. And so it was really hard. So to the point of Camel Crushes, I never had those. I don't know why I missed that boat. But they were very popular in other countries. So by the time I actually had started vaping, one of the challenges that I had was the job I had. I ended up all of a sudden going from being this indigenous kind of like local worker guy, drove to work every day, to all of a sudden flying to all these foreign countries and stuff, places I never would have dreamed of going in my normal life. And I had to do my research, right? Because I was vaping, and I'm like, well, what are the vaping restrictions in Singapore? What are the vaping restrictions in Dubai? Yeah, and
two good choices.
Yeah, and to quickly find out that in those particular countries it wasn't allowed, I really only had one alternative, was to go to, I mean, I could try to sneak it in, but why am I going to risk losing a $200 device at, customs at the border, when that made no logical sense to me? So I'm like, I guess I'll just smoke for a week, or whatever. So you go to these places and you would buy whatever was available. And shockingly enough, in those countries, the things that were unavailable to us, because, flavored cigarettes weren't allowed here. We couldn't have the little flavor poppers and the other things that, I kind of lasted for a short period of time. But that's when I finally found those. And so it makes absolute sense that they would try to tell you, John, that it was some refreshing cigarette experience, so that they could, get you to buy more cartons and stuff like that. So
she was hooked day one. Which upset me, because at that time we smoked the same brand. So now, I didn't like those. I could, if I didn't have a pack, I couldn't get a cigarette from her, because I didn't want that thing, because I was always afraid, it's a chemical. There's something in there that you're popping, trying to explain. Even though I know how bad the cigarette is for you already, I still was like, come on, you're popping something. There's a crystal. I don't know what the hell's in there. I go, it can't be good for you.
I don't know, man. There's almost nothing you could put in a cigarette that would make it more dangerous than it already is.
Menthol.
So I guess I have a question for Jim, because I unfortunately was not part of the show where Jim was here a year ago. So I know very little about Jim personally. So I'm curious, and I'm sure some people in the chat weren't here either. How did your vaping journey begin? Like, how long did you smoke, and what?
I smoked for 38 years.
Yeah.
So I started when I was 15, and I smoked till I was 53. I don't know what gave me the idea to vape. So for about 3 years before I started vaping, I walked past a kiosk that sold Cigalikes every day, multiple times a day. And I never had the urge to try one of them.
Yeah.
But at some point, I must have read an article or something about e-cigarettes, and I decided, you know what? I'm going to try this, and I'm going to quit smoking. And so I ordered this. It was 2 Ego batteries, 2 atomizers, and a bottle of the worst tasting tobacco flavored e-liquid you've ever tried.
Totally Wicked, possibly?
No. It was a no name, it was the brand of the company that sold the kit. And
like the Ego tea and the cone.
It was an Ego tea for sure.
The tornado.
Which I went in rapid succession between about 20 different products as soon as I started. But anyway, I ordered that starter kit. I filled it up. I took one hit and said, this is going to work to make me quit smoking. And I quit smoking in 2 weeks.
Wow.
So it did work. I had the goal of quitting. I wasn't an accidental quitter. It was my idea that I would quit. And I did. And, after, I think it was, so I started vaping on November 1st. It was about a week before Barack Obama was reelected. And then by November,
smoking too.
November 17th, I had my last cigarette. I carried around cigarettes for a couple months after that because
So 2012.
I thought this is too, yeah, I thought it was too good to be true, and that at some moment I was going to have to have a cigarette, and that would be the end of it. But it never happened. So,
how much would you say you were smoking at that point when you
2
were?
packs a day. About 2 packs a day.
Yeah,
And
there aren't a whole lot of people that
very
smoked as much as I
confused.
did at 35. It was incredible. But
Yeah, I mean, so my whole adult life, I smoked between a pack and a half and 2 packs a day,
Mm.
pretty much.
I would like for you kind of to share your process of how you go into writing an article and how you choose what you're going to write about, Jim.
That's a good question. How I choose is a mystery wrapped in a riddle. Um, so there are so many possible articles about
Right.
vaping stuff at any given time, and I have a certain amount of time, and sometimes I don't have enough time. And lately, for the past year or so, I haven't had time to get into like writing a really big article that takes me a week to do, which is something I used to do a lot. So typically, I will either I'll be forced to write an article. There's something that happens that just, this has to be an article. It has to happen today. I have to do it right now. Or there are like 10 or 12 things that I'm watching that one of them is gonna like pop and something's gonna happen. And anyway, once I decide on writing an article, I gather as much information about it as I can, usually newspaper articles, if there are any, or primary sources like press releases, or if it's about a study, I read the study. And then I sort of make notes to myself and put it in the order I want to write it. But a lot of times I don't do that. A lot of times I just start writing and it leads me one way or the other. And then I wind up having to move stuff all around and, edit the hell out of it. What I really could use is a good editor, but it's always been kind of left to me to edit my own stuff, which is not ideal. And
edit for
AI.
content or commas, just out of curiosity, just edit
edit for everything.
Okay.
No, I mean, commas aren't really a big problem. Although when you write something, if nobody else looks at it before you publish it, you'd be surprised at the big mistakes that should have been caught that managed to get past you, even though you've read it like 5 times, 20 times, 30 times. Still, there's stuff that's wrong. And that's why I think everybody needs an editor. But in any case,
yeah, I'm gonna die on the Oxford comma hill. I will not allow Twitter or X to take that from me. I'm sorry, I have to keep it. But yeah, I can't decide if Twitter is. I mean, I'm a fairly average writer as is, but I can't decide if it's made it better or worse. I blame it all on Fig Ramsey anyhow. But I think it's incredible the amount of the speed at which you put out a piece on whatever catches your eye that day. The one that you just wrote about the FDA sent warning letters, 15 online sellers and distributors of novelty vaping. It's the latest example of the agency's Google search enforcement strategy. I am still howling.
Well, this is what they're doing now. They're just going and like searching for stuff online and then sending warning letters.
They are searching for the most absurd example of that, which will never really see the light of day in junior high schools across.
There's some new in that article today. They found some new products that I hadn't seen before, but most of these have been around for years. They're just stupid novelty products that come out of Chinese factories not necessarily even vaping factories, and it's the kind of stuff that would sell in a dollar store, or it probably wouldn't sell that well, but and then they say that it's important. They're raising the alarm so that parents and teachers don't mistake the stuff for real products.
Right.
Is that 16-year-old kid carrying a real handheld SpongeBob SquarePants doll?
Or a Game Boy? It's amazing. They'll go from like, is that a sponge? It's a SquarePants. Is that real?
Yeah,
I mean, they just had on USB thumb drives or Game Boys, please.
Is that a real miniature Starbucks drink?
Yeah, really.
Or is it a vape?
Yeah. The marker one is scary. I'll agree with that one. That one's fucking scary because that is
seen those sold anywhere.
Did you see that one?
Yeah, but have you ever seen them for sale anywhere?
I have not. I've only seen like blips of them, and I've never actually, well, as a vapor, I mean, that's not even anything that interests me. Like, I don't need a disposable that's in the shape of a SpongeBob SquarePants, nor a marker. But, I sort of feel like even with that as being what some might perceive as a lure for kids, because it's cute or a collectible or novelty, I honestly don't even think kids are half interested in that stuff, even if they could find it in some back channel, some weird website where you might be able to buy it. I just don't think that they're more interested in something that's small, concealable, something that they can hide and keep from the wandering eyes that might be, focused on them and find them vaping. I have seen kids in this neighborhood, which ironically, as I say this, it's like, that's the first time I've ever seen the kids with the vapes. You know what I mean? Like, I haven't actually encountered young kids just kind of in packs with vapes and stuff like that, but they had elf bars and stuff like that. They didn't have these funky looking things.
Vape whatever is available. They vape what's popular. They vape what adults vape.
Yeah.
And the whole point of kids vaping is they're fucking adolescents.
Yeah.
Their whole job is to pretend to be an adult. That's their job. That's what they're there for.
Yeah.
There's this period of time, it's about 6 to 10 years, during which you rehearse being an adult and you try to do everything that adults do, everything good, everything bad. You sometimes make decisions that have, lifelong repercussions.
Yeah.
Like or getting pregnant.
Allstate does a whole commercial about you turning into your parents. I mean, it's just.
I have something to add to that, Jim. I think you're right. You said that. You've mentioned that many times on Twitter and in your articles. I think it's the perfect example. What I think is when I got to college, the students, the kids that were most likely to party themselves into a real into oblivion, into a hole, truly just lose their minds, never to be heard from again, in alcohol or drugs or whatever, were the ones that never got the opportunity to practice being an adult during their adolescence. The ones that didn't drink beers in high school, didn't attend a kegger. They were the ones that had a very strict upbringing. They had never been able to go out. They wouldn't dare, bring a beer into the house. And as soon as they, got, to college, they went nuts and lost their minds. And it was the people who had already spent time emulating, adults practicing. We were all exhausted by the time sophomore year came around. We were like, I'm tired. I don't really need to smoke any more weed.
I managed to keep it going from my teen years into my 40s. But I know what you mean. And I think you're right. And I think that it would do everybody a world of good to remember that the vast majority of teenagers, adolescents, and people in their 20s don't use drugs or alcohol or nicotine to excess. Some of them do, but almost very few do. And it's always, magnified in the press.
Yeah.
The small number that do.
Yeah. I think too, though, what I have been noticing here lately, I think a lot of the general public or the voter, I think is getting a little bit tired of let's protect the children. I know there are certain things that I do believe that we should be involved in, but I think I've noticed here lately with some articles that I read on MSN and a couple other places that a few people are getting tired of politicians using that as their play or their card when it comes to re-elections or getting bills put through and stuff like that. So that's
Well, that'd
something.
be great. I hope that's true.
I hope so, because I think that's been played out. I mean, it goes all the way. I'm sure they were doing it in the 20s.
They've always done it.
Yeah, they've always done it. They've always. I hate saying throwing the kids under the bus, but they use those kids for that purpose. And I think they're with social media and 24-hour news at your fingertips. I think people are starting to get the idea that that's just a card that they're using to get the things that they want done instead of what the general public wants. So hopefully, the next generation sees through that game. Question for you. Here we go. Let's have a fun one. What should I throw at them? I don't know. What do you think, guys? Do you think? Yeah, let's try. The first song you remember learning all the words to was, and could you sing a few bars of it?
I'm not singing.
I'll help.
I have no idea what the first song I knew all the words to.
I think maybe the first and only song you've ever commented on ever since I've known you on Facebook or Twitter, anything, was a song that I absolutely love. It reminds me a lot of Men at Work, only better. The whole album is great. I really wish I could remember the name of the band.
That'd be good.
Yeah, that would be good. It would be good.
Well, as I mentioned, I wrote about music when I was young, and I had a public radio show for about 10 years where we played like underground music. So I like music.
Was that the 80s, 70s, 80s? 80s.
Basically, the 80s were my 20s.
Yeah.
So I was born in 1959.
Yeah.
So that was,
68.
I love everything about 80s alternative, you name it. But this band in particular was sort of like pre-ska, sort of had a ska-ish reggae beat to it, but very much like an English presence. I don't know. It reminded me of Men at Work. Anyhow,
80s music was amazing. So
the English beat.
Well, let me hit you with the other music question. What is
the
band or musician you would love to party with? If you had a chance to party with this, dead or alive, who would it be?
I don't know, man. I've met a lot of musicians. Most of them you really don't want to hang out with.
True.
Dead or alive, who would I want to hang out with? I mean, I would just pick somebody who's interesting that I would want to talk to. I don't know, Bob Dylan.
That'd be a deep conversation, though.
I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not sure I'd want to pick Bob Dylan in the end. I don't know. So I've met some people, like I've met Joe Strummer.
You met Joe Strummer. Wow.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
Yeah, I remember getting the Clash record on Columbia House when you could get 12 records for 1 penny.
I did that many times.
and I got they're for you, Tim. They're looking for you. Careful.
And keep in mind, I was still within the confines of parental oversight, so there was plenty of times when I forgot to send that one that they sent you every month. That was like the one of the month, right. And then you had you either had to you had 7 or 10 days to return it to them without being charged. You know how many times I forgot to return that thing, and my mom would walk in my room with the bill and be like, "What is this?" And I'd be like, "Oh shit."
My problem with that was I could almost never find 12 albums that they offered that I wanted to get.
Exactly. I was like a hair metal guy, right? So it was like I was kind of caught in this weird kind of continuum where I'm like I was definitely like a hard rock, heavy metal, hair metal guy, but then I still had an affinity for like some of the music that I kind of grew up with through my parents and stuff. So it's like, so you had like the Kiss first record with like Black Diamond and Strutter on it, and then in the same breath, I'm like, okay, I guess I'll get the Christopher Cross album too. You know,
hey.
Yeah.
Like, what else am I supposed to pick? There's
Yeah,
nothing
yeah.
out there that I really want.
Okay, there's like
I had
there's 5 things I want. Now I've got to like pick a Carly Simon album.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like I don't know. Let me wait.
I've already got Gord's Gold Volume 2. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Billy Joel's greatest hits.
Or whatever. But yeah. So yeah, I went through that same thing. So I understand.
Well, I had for a short time in my life, I got a lot of promotional records from record companies.
Nice.
Which 95% of which went right to the used record store.
Right. That's crap.
Was this in the Detroit area? Was this in the Detroit area?
Mm-hmm.
That's saying something to be, getting free, records in, Detroit. I mean, I imagine there are plenty of people that know a thing or two about music in that part of the world.
Well, I mean, if you write reviews that get published, they'll send you stuff. But most of it's garbage. So that's
the most scathing review you ever wrote. Do you remember what that was?
I didn't have that many published in. What was the question?
The question was, what was the worst album that you wrote a scathing review about and felt like apologizing for nothing?
I didn't really have the opportunity to do that. Almost all of my published reviews were generally positive.
Yeah.
So if you took the time to write something, it would typically be in favorable.
Yeah, because I was like writing freelance and submitting reviews, and eventually like might get to know the editors, so you have an idea of what they're looking for or what they're interested in. But by and large, I was just going in like cold calling them with reviews. So,
well, I got an article idea for you, Jim. Now that I know all this about you, it would be great to see an article on Vaping 360 where you put both of those two things together, music and vaping.
Yeah,
we used to do that.
Yeah, get out in the mainstream with an article about some rocker and a one-on-one interview with a rocker. That's vaping.
Yeah, I don't want to do interviews with.
Oh,
God. That's work.
That's work. You want to answer Mark's question there? What was the best concert you ever been?
Oh, so I've been to a lot of good ones. Almost all the best ones were in like tiny clubs or bars. The Slits at Second Chance in Ann Arbor was probably the best ever.
Living in the area,
likely to have heard of the Clash's first time in Detroit. They played the Masonic Temple there. That was great.
It probably was really awesome growing up in that area and having those small little venues. And, well, that's one thing. I'm not a huge country fan, but I love the fact that that's how most of those country artists start, and a lot of them would do a lot of their shows in these little bars out in the middle of nowhere, and get found. I wish more artists. I know it's tough, but it would be nice to see more artists going back to doing those little gigs. Just surprise some small town bar with Van Halen, nobody knows, and all of a sudden, hey, there's Van Halen's at, the Barbie bar, or whatever you want to call it. But
shit, they're old.
Yeah.
I can't remember for sure, but I think I was fortunate enough to meet Jack White a couple times actually. And Slits, are they from Michigan?
Who?
The Slits, the band that you mentioned first.
Well, the Slits are English, all
okay.
From the days.
He was fond, and I imagine still is very fond of his roots in the Detroit area. And
who are you talking about?
Jack White.
Oh, yeah.
You can get Kid Rock. I'm sure Kid Rock vapes. different kind of music altogether. No, I'm tying in the music and vaping together as an article. Kid Rock and Jim McDonald, one-on-one, Vaping 360.
Kid
Didn't you
Rock
see
used to
online? He had a Bud Light. He sold out.
he used to live right by my sister.
Oh, Jeff, Timmy, do you have a question?
Yeah. So, I mean, going back to the whole vaping thing. So, I mean,
Why? I'm kidding.
exactly. Let's talk about obscure underground indie bands that only played like one time in Detroit, Michigan. So my question is, just from your own personal opinion, looking at the landscape of how things are. I mean, obviously, I think all of us are resolute in the idea that we're going to continue vaping, that we're not going to go back to smoking, that we're going to do our part to try to keep vaping, in play as much as we humanly can, with very little influence on the powers that be. What do you think is, just personal opinion, the stance that we should take in terms of trying to navigate these waters at this time? And I say that from, I mean, obviously there's advocacy, we can certainly continue to push a message, but is this something that's like, just stay the course, and hopefully we'll turn the tide eventually, while things get worse before they get better? Or do you think that there is a particular strategy advocates and consumers can take where we could maybe focus our energy towards a particular organization? One of the things we talk about here on the show is that it seems like, we've got all these little groups and factions and organizations that all take part in, what appears to be the greater fight and the greater good, but we don't seem to have our focus maybe in one place and all of the money going to that one place to kind of fight it. We've kind of diversified, and that makes it harder to kind of fight, with our own multi-headed hydra, I guess is the best way to say that.
All right. So this is this sounds like a 1 hour conversation, but
It could be. It could very well be.
But
We got an hour left.
No, I think that you should start out by, first of all, these are my opinions and not the opinions of CASA,
Sure.
for example, which is the only legitimate vaping consumer organization. I mean, I don't know what money you're talking about, but the vaping businesses should definitely use their own money to defend their business. And whether they do that individually or through organizations like AVM, or some other organizations that may or may not still be in existence. AVM is certainly the leader for vaping businesses now. They should do that, and they never really have. Some have, but by and large, most businesses that make a lot of money off of vaping aren't putting their money into fighting for vaping.
Right.
By and large. I'm not saying there aren't some huge exceptions to that, because there are. Consumers should give money to CASA, and CASA could do a lot of stuff that we can't do now if we had money. We don't have any money.
Yeah.
We have just barely enough money to pay Alex Clark and to buy the program that lets us do calls to action.
Yes.
And that's all we have. And every year, or every meeting, every monthly board meeting, we start out looking at how much money we have in the bank, and we say, well, we don't have to start nailing the doors today, but we don't have any money. So if you want to do something for vaping, you could give money to CASA. And I think that would be a wonderful thing. Or you could, if you don't have money to give, please write letters to legislators and letters to the editor. I mean, there was a time when Greg Conley was actively trying to teach people how to write letters to the editor. So, and maybe he still does do that, I don't know. But these are things that can make a difference. They don't make an overwhelming difference today or tomorrow or the next day, but they add up.
Yeah.
And who reads letters to the editors? Businesses and local politicians and the leaders in the towns where the newspapers are published.
Yeah.
That's who reads them, and that's who you're writing for. Those are things that can be done that are by and large not done. Or if they're done by some organization that's getting, paid to do it. And it would be better if it was just local citizens. So I don't know that there's a lot of organizations that are fighting it out for some funding from vapors or vaping businesses. I think there's very few, really.
Yeah, I think that's the thing is that there might be people that are interested in donating or putting what little money they might be able to sacrifice. I mean, everybody gets drained one way or another. We go to the grocery store, we're asked for $1 for this, we're asked for $1 for that, and I think that we might not all be single issue voters. Where you would think if that really was the case. And that was our motivation. I think we get caught up in this sort of dark web of kind of having to open up and consider other policies that these politicians push that might benefit us in other parts of our lives. But vaping is extremely important to us. I think that the slow return on progress in the pro-vaping corner is a discouragement for a lot of people who are vapors. So they've kind of retreated into this self-preservation mode. It's like, well, let me just make sure I can still get what I need to get where I need to get it, despite my local vape shop shutting down. Thank God I can still maybe order online or whatever. Yeah. But they do have a general concern to want to see vaping win. And it's not because they're selfish, because they're like, oh, it's just about me and my ability to vape. They want to educate others. They want to help others. They want to still be part of the community. And then they look around at the landscape and they're like, well, I'm not really sure where to focus that donation that I might be able to give, and maybe put it into the pocket of one particular influence that might have some reach beyond their capability. So, if you can't get people to sign petitions anymore, and you can't get people to show up to hearings anymore, but they still have that ray of hope that, at some point there'll be some element of relaxation on the assault on vaping, because we're coming from the adult space. We're not, and many of them are parents, so they educate their kids appropriately. I would probably gather to say that vaping parents probably don't have the same challenges with their kids as, say, the, unattentive, busy dink family, that, dad's an executive and he's on planes all the time, and mom has got a busy life and she's got to take care of the home front. So their kids are the ones that are kind of rebelling and acting out and going and sneaking the disposable. But, I think that's something that I even ask myself. It's like, I've got some money to give. If I can help the fight somewhere, I see lawyers over here doing this, and I see this organization supporting the hardware manufacturers, and I see this organization over here, that's like CASA, consumer advocate organization, in simplest terms. I think people need a notion of where to go. Like, where can I?
If you're a business, you should focus on an organization that supports businesses. If you're a vapor, a consumer, you should focus on an organization that supports consumers, and there's only one.
Yeah.
But I have a limited amount of sympathy for people who are just too overwhelmed with life to ever put any effort into this fight. It is a fight. Okay, then I guess goodbye to you, because
do you think some people have gotten to that point because of prior issues in the beginning with advocacy in the earlier stages, when the battle started coming out, where it almost seemed like this advocacy group was fighting this one? And granted, everybody wants something different. The businesses the local businesses wanted something, the websites wanted something, the e-liquid manufacturers wanted something, and it seemed like
You're talking about industry groups. I'm talking
right.
about individuals. I don't
Well,
have, I don't care about the industry.
Right, but do you feel that kind of affected the CASAs and the other groups that were out there
Right, I
for?
think it affects CASA when an industry group comes out and asks for money from individuals, which should never ever happen.
Yeah, Tony Abboud owes me $25 as far as I'm
Yeah.
concerned. I never saw that. I never saw those big discounts and like vapor, shops across the country.
Your ass is still chapped about that $25.
My ass is chapped about we can do without menthol.
I'm just saying, if industry groups aren't able to organize a large enough number of businesses to support them, then they're in trouble. But I mean, the answer to that is not to go to consumers. The consumers already pay for everything they do. They buy their products. So
we are the only ones
you buy products from the vape shop. Now the vape shop wants you to also give them $25 to support their industry association. No.
Yeah, that's what ticked me off about the VTA VIP card. I thought that was pretty much.
I see Abboud still involved occasionally, and like
got to suppress the gag reflex, Jim. Got to suppress it.
Well, I'm just wondering if VTA exists as an operating thing. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
It means about yay much to me. But I think you're right. I think that recently in Alabama we had a very it was great. Greg came down here. We went, to the Alabama State House because they passed a very clandestine synthetic ban, and they were trying to give a great deal of authority and power to the Alcohol Beverage Control Board here, and they were also trying to pass legislation that would essentially penalize kids, to the tune of hundreds of dollars and perhaps real criminal records, for getting caught instead of, and I mean, and it was an eye-opening experience. And our state association, thankfully, is has some new fresh blood on the board, but I think up to that point they were absolutely asleep at the wheel, and
that's a common problem. Also, these state associations, they rise and fall with the whatever the government's doing. So they'll get all hyped up and working hard on something when something's going on, and then just kind of recede into the when nothing is going on. I understand that. I sympathize, and I know they have other things to do, and if they can work that if they can make that work as a strategy, we just become an organization when we're needed, and then we just kind of aren't the rest of the time, then that's okay. The vape shop owners in Michigan got very active when Governor Whitmer was trying to ban flavors.
Yeah.
And they did a fantastic job, and they went to court and they stopped her. And Mark Sliss, who you said was in the chat, is
absolute nature. Yes,
he's a leader in that. And,
he is.
And by the way, when I was getting pissed off there about trade associations asking for money from vapors, that is not to say that trade associations and CASA don't work together. They do all the time. Alex is constantly talking to people from industry groups, and they certainly should work together. But consumers shouldn't support trade associations, and trade associations shouldn't ask them for money.
Right.
Absolutely agreed.
Yeah.
Absolutely agreed. No, I think that the Breathe Easier Alliance of Alabama sort of was at its strongest going into the rally in DC in 2019. And somewhere between then and the beginning of the pandemic, it became very, easy to not be involved, because whereas in many states vape shops were closed down, Alabama
That's
was
another
lucky enough to actually find themselves, all the vapor shops here were lucky enough to find themselves in a position where they fell under the same purview as the ABC stores and alcohol. They were able to continue operating, and you become a bit complacent, I guess. And as a consumer, I do my best to remind people of what's coming and what you should be prepared for. And at the same time, I don't want to tell these people how to run their businesses. And there is, finally, I believe there is a consumer member of our state's advocacy group, but prior to that, it was never something that existed, a consumer.
So a lot of the state groups are sort of hybrids between trade associations and consumer groups, and that's cool. I'm more concerned with like national trade associations deciding, hey, money's low, let's start asking our customers to not only buy our products and support us, but to give us cash also. I don't think that's kosher.
Couldn't agree more.
The state groups are a little bit different. So
Yeah.
Yes, they are.
Sometimes there are consumers who are deeply involved with a really good example. I probably shouldn't give an individual example. So there was a state trade group in Utah. It's one of the very first ones. And it was run by a guy who was fantastic and did not own a business. He was just a vapor who got involved and became one of the very, very best advocates for vaping in the country. Anyway, that was a long time ago.
Yeah, I think my concern is more about, if I'm going to donate money to the cause, I want to ensure that the money is going to an organization that I feel is going to be able to, permeate sort of the impenetrable wall, at least be able to make a difference at a governmental level or a legislative level. And now CASA is great, and that's because CASA isn't just sort of focused. I mean, yes, they're focused on local and federal lawmakers who are trying to pass legislation, but they also address all the states and everybody's, general place. So, I mean, it's a little bit more multifaceted than, say, sort of like kind of an omnidirectional sort of fight,
Well, CASA doesn't represent industry; it just represents consumers.
Right.
And all CASA really does is make it easy for consumers to find out what's going on and take action on it.
Yeah.
If we had 3 times as much money, maybe we could hire a lobbyist. Maybe we could do a lot of things.
Yeah.
But we don't. We have enough money to pay Alex and to pay for the software.
Right.
And Alex works all the fucking time.
All the fucking
for
time.
his money.
Yeah. It was really amazing to meet Alex finally in Charleston, and there's no question about it. He's committed and he works very hard.
Yeah, he's a dynamo.
Yeah, he's a very impressive guy.
Modest dynamo, but he's also just a really nice guy.
Super nice guy with great taste in music as well.
Well, let me ask you, as far as the consumer, what should be in the consumer's playbook when it comes to advocacy?
Write letters, talk to people who don't vape, learn enough that you don't sound like you're a
conspiracy theorist.
Yeah. We talked about the conspiracy.
It's a daily struggle. God damn it. It really is. Pardon me.
There are a lot of conspiracies. That's the problem. So
actually, that's a good point. Jim, what's the number one myth that you see people like. I see everyone, for example, there are certain people, I'm not naming names of no one that we know per se, but a lot of people will just yell, "Oh, MSA funds, you keep keep smoke, we need the money." Can you maybe dispel a few myths about how MSA funds are appropriated and
Sure.
how that? Okay, that would be great.
Well, the
Please.
MSA was an agreement between 46 state attorneys general and the tobacco companies. And the agreement was that tobacco companies would pay the states in perpetuity a certain amount of money based on the number of cigarettes they sell in that state. Also smokeless tobacco, but that's a tiny little part of it. And that's what it is. The money doesn't go anywhere else. It just goes to the states.
And the tobacco companies received indemnity against future lawsuits.
Against lawsuits by the states.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's exactly correct. And there was money set aside for some other things right up front. One of which was the American Legacy Foundation, which is now called the Truth Initiative. The Truth Initiative was created out of MSA funds, $1.5 billion over, I think, 2 or 3 years, and then no more after that. They never got. They don't get MSA funds every year. The state, all that goes to the states. Only the states. The state governments get the MSA funds, and in most states, I think in all states, but I might be wrong about that, the MSA payments are much less than the actual cigarette taxes that the state collects. Yep. So it's not like the MSA funds are the biggest element of cigarette sales in the states. Except in the states that have really low taxes, the taxes are much, much more than the MSA payments are.
And for just while we're on the subject, the Centers for Tobacco Products at the FDA, that is funded in part by user fees, if I'm not correct. 100%. Okay, 100%. Is there just a brief way to explain that to our viewers at home?
So user fees are determined for each tobacco company based on a really bizarre formula that has to. I don't even want to get into the formula, but basically, it has to do with how many cigarettes, cigars, pipe tobacco, and smokeless tobacco, how much they sell. Right. And a percentage of that goes to run the Center for Tobacco Products. And that's the only source of money for the Center for Tobacco Products. They don't get any money from your taxes.
So it has to do with the tobacco companies and a weird sort of equation having to do maybe a little bit with market share. Maybe, I don't know.
I don't think it has. Well, it amounts to market share, ultimately, but that isn't what the formula looks at. Anyway, it's the last couple of years, it's been right around $700 million a year that goes to run the Center for Tobacco Products. And that money goes to all the things the Center for Tobacco Products does, including, reviewing PMTAs and, all of their excellent messaging work, getting the word out about vape worms and, stuff like that.
Oh, are you possessed? Yes, indeed I am. Yeah,
exactly. And all the other various things that they do. One of the things the Center for Tobacco Products does that a lot of people don't realize is there's a joint organization with the NIH, the National Institutes of Health, that gives grants for research on all things tobacco and nicotine, vaping, smoking, and everything else. And that's paid for out of the tobacco company user fees. So whenever you'll often see that some study was funded by a grant from the National Cancer Institute. That's all money coming from the FDA. the National Cancer Institute doesn't appropriate tax money for those studies. It all comes from the CTP, the Center for Tobacco Products.
Well,
See, I didn't actually know that.
CASA should ask for some of that money.
Yeah.
Well, are these new novel tobacco products that are made by, well, now part of Altria or Reynolds? Are they part of the user fee equation yet?
The FDA has been asking for several years now for Congress to include vaping products in the user fee structure and give them an additional $100 million a year, which would be from vaping products. If they do that, it's going to be Congress that has to write the formula for, and of course, the vast majority of it would come from Views and Juul and a handful of tobacco companies that own a large enough vaping business that it amounts to anything.
And do you think that if those user fees were, if they did, decide to impose user fees on novel products, do you think that those would end up, would they take the form of a price hike to consumers, or?
I think any kind of cost that goes into, a business gets passed on to consumers eventually.
Okay, well, I was just wondering if there was any upside.
I don't know how much it would.
Yeah.
Excuse me. 38 years of Camels.
Water, Jim. Water, Jim.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that would play out.
Got to stay hydrated.
But sure, it would be added onto the cost of products.
Thanks, Jim.
Jim, if you had an hour alone in the White House, what would you do? You can't get in trouble for it either.
An hour in the White House? You mean to talk to somebody?
No, whatever you want to do. It's all up to you. Whatever you want to do.
The place is empty. You cannot be held accountable for what you do in that matter.
Empty.
Yeah, it's empty, baby. It's all yours.
I'd probably go out back and go birding.
Go out.
Go what?
I'd go outside and go birding.
What does that mean?
Watching birds.
Oh, gosh, God bless you. That's a good idea, actually.
I think Jim's playing it safe with that answer.
No, the building's empty. What do I want to work?
You don't want to talk to there's nothing to do in there.
I have to say, I would like to walk the gardens, and I mean, we don't know, what wildlife is lurking in the gardens, that sort of thing. But
I've never been to the White House, so I don't know what the grounds look like. But I assume they have trees with birds in them. I've heard the birds singing during outdoor news conferences.
Yeah. Well, last week, Michelle got me thinking, her suggestion. So I started thinking to answer that question. Now, I think I'd do the same that she would. I'd start looking around for that secret door. There's got to be a secret door somewhere over there that has a room that no one has ever seen. I think that's what I would do.
Aren't there all kinds of tunnels and stuff underneath?
Yeah, I would.
Yeah, we were talking about JFK's Funhouse or something like that, but we can't be sure, and I'm pretty sure the mirror's dry by now, don't you?
I'm thinking more about tunnels so that Bill Clinton could go to McDonald's and stuff.
Yeah. JFK's cocaine room is what she said, which made me think there's got to be some rooms in there nobody knows about. I would love to explore the White House and find some of those rooms. It'd be pretty neat. You guys, you have a question, Timmy? Or Philip? I'm sorry, I don't know.
Go to Philip.
It's Philip. It's Philip.
No, Philip asked all about who funds who and user fees. Philip has been thank you.
Oh, well, I can hit you with some more fun questions unless you guys want to keep going deep.
Well, I mean, we can always continue to go deep. So,
yeah, there you go.
So, do you feel though as that some of the continued chatter on the social media platforms, that I know that you kind of shared your opinion that you didn't think that going one-to-one on Twitter really showed any benefit to you. But do you think that that social media at all, from an advocacy position, is beneficial? I'm thinking Twitter more, just because you actually have the actual people there, versus like Facebook, where you're probably getting some kid who's paid $5 an hour just to be an admin of the page.
Yeah, well, you probably are on Twitter too. I mean, if you're talking to like a big organization.
Yeah.
I think they're valuable to keep people talking to each other, and to meet new people who are interested or involved with vaping. I don't think that by and large posts on Twitter or other social media have an effect on public opinion, by and large. I think sometimes they probably do, but I tell you what I don't like on Twitter. Okay. I don't like when some person makes a stupid comment about vaping and like 9 people jump on them with responses. The person has like 25 followers.
I think we're all guilty of making that.
I'm guilty of it. I'm guilty of it too, but I try not to do it, and I don't like to see it when it happens. I don't think it looks good for vaping that like vapors mob somebody.
Yeah.
Especially when it's just an individual and not a representative of some organization. That's a little bit different.
Yeah, their approach should be a little bit more different. I think their approach should be more to try to educate them instead of trying to make them look stupid. I think if we go in,
if you have 9 people educating somebody at the same time,
it's difficult.
Like it still looks like a mob. And the other thing I don't like is when we give oxygen to people who really should be starved of oxygen. I'm thinking particularly of that.
I can't imagine who you're talking about.
That absolute asshole in Northern Australia.
Are you talking about the Turkish?
Yeah.
Yes. And
the guy like started out with like 25 followers. Yeah. Now he's got, I don't know how many, but it's all vapors.
He's got 125. It's an amazing comeback.
It's all vapors. It's all vapors. And if it wasn't for vapors, nobody would know the guy exists.
I have discussed these things ad nauseum with people who know much more than I do, and it has not been without hiccups, but we're getting there. And he is literally, if you just go over, if you haven't blocked him, you probably should. I just muted him. If you go over that man's replies, he is literally throwing just a bullshit comment to anyone. I mean, whether it be, Sharon Cox, who's English. Hey.
The great and wonderful Allison has joined.
But to finish what I was gonna say is we had Michelle on last week, and I posted the link to it, and I thanked her for being on the show. And of course, after a while, I saw at the bottom of my post, there's you've muted this person. Would you like to see? I'm like, oh, what the hell harm could it do? It's like, oh, another right-wing conservative think tank. All you care about is the money. And I couldn't help but repost a response that Dana Camp, assistant editor, made earlier that day. Dude, I voted for Biden. That's the last time I will ever engage.
I don't think Michelle's right wing at all, but
far from it.
Yeah.
No, he's pretty much commenting on anyone. Yeah, he can't stop. I think I'm going to actually have to block the guy. It's going to be my first block.
He's lonely is what it is. But you know where he lives? He lives like way up in the Northern Territories in Australia, like where Crocodile Dundee is from.
That's funny. I don't really see. He would be pretty much the antithesis of the Bushman as far as I'm concerned. He's just.
I think he just doesn't have anybody around.
For a while, I thought that maybe he was, being paid by somebody to run, interference for, God knows what other, anti-vape advocate, because all he does is just, bugger you senseless.
But I don't think even the other anti-vaping advocates in Australia know who he is.
Yeah.
Oh, they're mortified of the guy.
Hold on, Philip. Let Allison get a couple questions Go ahead, Al.
Oh boy. Okay. I don't know what I've missed because I've been in car hell with my son. So I was going to ask you with the whole Kathleen Crosby thing, and I'm sure you guys already went over all of this. You know, what is the deal with the end of nicotine? Like, I mean, how is that even a thing? Like, I don't understand what the problem is. I enjoy having a glass of wine. I enjoy my nicotine. Why are they so hell bent on getting rid of nicotine?
I don't know, but it's not a new thing. So people have been like, you know, just crazy about getting rid of tobacco and nicotine ever since it arrived in Europe, what, 600 years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah. So ever since then, by the way, it spread like wildfire across Europe and Asia in about 10 years with no advertising.
Yeah.
You know, nobody had to like have billboards for tobacco to become popular.
Yeah.
But there's been like an absolute insane strain of prohibitionist frenzy about tobacco and nicotine for hundreds of years, and it rises and falls.
Yeah.
And I think that they think, and I think that people have thought this before, I think that they think that now's the time that we can just get rid of it.
Right. Except for in cigarettes, though. Those are still cool.
Well, no, they want to get rid of cigarettes too, but you know, it's a slow motion prohibition, and that'll probably be the last to go.
Well, how much power would that give the pharmaceutical companies being the only ones that have access to nicotine?
I don't know that it would give them much power at all, because once people quit using the, you know,
something that's always limited is always more expensive.
Well, there will be a black market.
Yeah, absolutely. Just like everything else.
Yeah. That's the case with everything that people want to prohibit. You can't prohibit it. It doesn't.
You can't. It just creates more of a demand. That's the whole, like, we've seen this already. I don't understand how people don't learn from the past here and correct the mistakes.
Like whatever the topic, whatever the object of prohibition is at the time, the people who are really involved with wanting to do that don't seem to have any historical knowledge at all about the idea of prohibition. It's never worked for anything.
Nothing.
Yeah.
It just makes it more in demand. More people want it because they can't have it. It's the same as telling kids not to do something that they want to try or interested in. They're going to want to do it more.
My question for these people is, you know, have you noticed that marijuana has been fairly popular for the last 100 years?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, with no advertising, with no brands, there's nobody that you can recognize is selling it.
Yeah. Well, it's funny too, because like I'll go to the pool. I live in a townhouse community, a lot of older folks at the pool on the weekends, and they'll be like, I do a little marijuana. And I'm like, now you want to admit it because now it's socially acceptable, but you never would have admitted that 20 years ago.
Yeah. And, you know, it's worth mentioning that, you know, now we've got, you know, if you have an 80-year-old living next to you, they might have been like smoking weed at Woodstock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even the old people are, you know, part of the marijuana generation.
Yeah.
The 60s and beyond.
Yep.
So, you know, it's becoming harder to like pretend that it's not socially acceptable.
They're still a little embarrassed about admitting it, though. I see. Like I know.
Yeah, and you also get an idea of how many people weren't using it, because there's a lot of people
come out of the woodwork. Some of my friends' parents, I was just like, you know, they were always the ones like, you know, don't be smoking any pot, you know, when we go out on Friday night. Now I'm like, they were all closet pot smokers. And like now they're in their late 60s, early 70s, and they're like, oh yeah, we smoked it all the time. I was like,
what they meant was don't be smoking any pot without me. That's what they meant.
No, that was the golden rule when you were a teenager.
Oh yeah, big time.
You don't smoke pot. Your uncle, maybe. one of your cool uncles,
Maybe, yeah.
not your parents and not your buddy's parents. I was like,
Yeah.
oh no.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm waiting for my mom to finally admit that her and dad, smoked a doobie up on, Lover's Point, where they were necking in the back of the car, which is kind of a weird thing to even say and have to put into your mind. But with that said, I think my parents were a little bit out of that range. You know what I mean? They weren't, 70s derivatives, they were a little bit older than that. So I think that they were probably the byproduct of hearing about, how, or seeing the news or, and understanding to them that marijuana might have been detrimental. But I think I think finally people are kind of turning the corner on it, and they realize that, when you put marijuana into perspective, it's not like it starts like massive brawls in the middle of the street and people aren't getting high as a kite, off of some good bud and then breaking in and robbing stores and shit like that.
Right. The
So
worst
I
thing
think-
that ever happened to me was I sat at a stop sign until it turned green.
Yeah,
I
now
I was overly cautious.
Yeah. If they want to attribute marijuana use to obesity, well, then you might have an argument there, considering the bags of Doritos that are consumed and whatever else in the fridge that just happened to be available at that moment.
Cool Ranch,
Exactly.
please, Tim. Cool Ranch.
Cupcakes.
So I think that you get an idea looking at the marijuana situation. It's been legal medically in California since, I think, 1996. So 27 years we've had some level of state legality, and it's expanding rapidly. I think we're at 23 states that have recreational pot legal.
Yeah.
I mean, you see how long that's taking, and there have been people fighting full-time for legal marijuana since the 70s. So don't be shocked that it's going to take a long time to change public opinion on vaping.
Yeah.
Or Ethan Nailman saying something really important during a CASA space on Twitter about how long it took to get marijuana, at the into the conversation, and he said, I'm all for tobacco harm reduction. Just know that it's a few decades away, and I think he was absolutely more right than wrong.
I think it's a few decades for widespread acceptance. I don't think it's going to take a few decades to start having some wins.
Agreed.
So,
Tim.
Yeah, no, it just to Jim's point, and I agree. I do think it's going to take some time before we really see the tide turn. I guess my question to that would be: do you foresee the younger generation kind of coming up behind the old stuffy gray-haired suits and ties and the ignorant sort of millennial mothers that are
they're doing
kind of crabby? It's going to be like the 20 years below us generation, 2 decades below us, that'll be like, man, what's the big deal about vaping?
Yeah, I mean, smoking is practically dead for people in their teens at this point. And like I said earlier, way more people between age 20 and 30 vape than smoke now.
Yeah.
It's not even funny. It's like, it's just a wave happening that these people can't comprehend.
Yeah.
So they think they're going to just outlaw it and it'll go away. It's not going away.
Yeah.
Right.
Put this toothpaste back in the tube. It's out.
Yeah.
That's how you end up with SpongeBob vapes. That's what that happens.
Yeah. Allie, you got one more. I want to make sure you get a couple questions in, Allie, before we head out.
Oh God, my brain is so frazzled
Can I
right
ask
now.
you a big one, your new one? Do you want to ask your new one?
What's my new one? Oh. What
is the best piece of advice you ever
advice
been
that
given?
you ever got? Yeah.
The best piece of advice I ever got?
Yeah.
I don't know. I probably ignored it because I have a long history of not listening to people who are making sense. I don't know. I'm coming up blank on this one.
You have another question for him, Allie?
I mean, it's all the same questions, which I know how you're going to answer them, which is, I mean,
Yeah.
nothing's going to change. I mean, obviously the topic of the show is Kathleen Crosby. She's, Koval 2.0. She's going to go in and do more of the same. Her background is marketing. So I'm sure she's going to come up with some great marketing campaigns for
behavioral change marketing.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yep. So, and, I mean, at some point in her career admitted that vaping was less harmful than smoking cigarettes, but also said vaping will kill you, in the same breath. So,
he didn't say that after all. Yes.
But,
God bless you for those corrections.
Yeah.
Or maybe he did say it and it was a different time.
But I mean, she's done enough. And I mean, I think she's a lot of the brain behind a lot of this campaign for tobacco free kids and all the ads that we're seeing and stuff like that. She takes a lot of pride in that. So I guess we'll see what comes next, Brainworms 2.0.
One thing that's going to be interesting in the next few years is to see how Campaign for Tobacco Free Kids works without Matt Myers. So for 30 years, Matt Myers has been the one guy who basically ran all of tobacco control. All the messaging came from Matt Myers. All the strategic planning came from Matt Myers.
He's still on as an advisor, though, correct?
Yeah, but he's like 174 years old. So he's got limited
advice,
limited future. So, I mean,
or one out.
Now it's going to be other people, and I think you might see a little bit of struggle between the people to see who has the loudest voice or who has the ear of the most people.
Yeah.
If you look at the boards of all these groups, they're all on each other's boards.
Yep.
So they're working together anyway, but it'll be interesting to see. Nancy Brown at American Heart Association is on everybody's board.
Has Cosby worked alongside or with, in any capacity, with Bloomberg in the past?
Yeah, I think so, because I'm pretty sure FDA has collaborated with, I don't know, maybe not. I'm not sure, actually. Bloomberg is the money guy, he's
the money guy. Yeah.
That's what he is. He's the money guy.
I always felt that it was from Matt Myers to either Kelly Henning or directly to Bloomberg how to spend it on anti-vaping campaign.
Okay. Matt Myers has the ideas. Bloomberg writes the checks. So, and that's pretty recent, by the way. Bloomberg hasn't been a major funder of tobacco control for 30 years. He's been one for like 15. I mean, more outside the country than inside the country until recently. But the ideas all came from Matt, and I'll be curious to see how that plays out as he fades away.
I think perhaps that unified front might falter just a bit.
I don't know. Maybe there'll be infighting. Maybe not. I don't know.
Fingers crossed.
So I just saw a press release about Kathy Crosby. By the way, she's now Kathy, according to Truth. She's always been Kathleen Crosby. Now she's Kathy Crosby. So it's a funny name.
Just change it to Karen already. It's fine.
That sounds very kid appealing to me. I'm sorry. Kathleen is more formal.
They're all Karen. But the
crazy
press release was signed by the new Tobacco Free Kids president. It's gave me a little exciting jolt. Like, whoa, that's gone.
I'm excited that I don't know who that is, and I'm okay with that for tonight.
She's been with TFK for a long time. If I can find it. No, I don't have the press release up now.
All right, guys, we are out of time. I want to thank you, Jim, for joining us today. It was good having you back on your 1-year anniversary. It was just weird that it was exactly 1 year ago today that you were on this show, but worked out nice.
Weird.
I appreciate everything you do for the community, and I love reading your articles, and hope you come back and join us soon. I'm going to let Tim say his goodbyes and work our way down.
Yeah, I mean, it's always great to be in the company of the truth sayers and the people that, communicate the message and get information to the people who are begging for it. I mean, it really, truly appreciate that you have such a central focus on the vaping industry and sharing your words to try to enlighten everybody to understand sort of what's kind of going on underneath the covers. Because let's be realistic, not everybody here has the time to do as much of the research as you do. So I think that's ultimately why everyone appreciates your words and the things you have to say, because it gives us information to help us communicate and fight as well, so we can share information with fellow vapors so we can spread the message. So thank you for everything that you do. Thank you for coming on the show. Really appreciate your company. And it was wonderful to meet you finally a year later.
Yeah, that's very nice of you. And I do it all for the kids.
That's true. You got to do it for the kids.
All for the kids.
Us kids.
Oh, God bless you, Jim.
You get this, Jim. You get this, Jim.
Thank you so much for joining us, Jim. We appreciate every time you come on. We love having you on, and I'm sorry I missed most of the show.
Yeah, well,
life happens.
I mean, the only reason I came on was to talk to you.
Oh, God, now I feel even worse.
That's like, she's prettier than the rest of us, Jim. We understand.
It's so painful to know that he's not kidding. Ow.
He's also very knowledgeable.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Coming from you, that means a lot. Thank you so much, though. And hopefully next time I'll make the whole show.
Yeah. And it was good to meet Phillip, too.
Jim, I think I might have started doing the show right around the time that you made an appearance a year ago, and I was so pissed that I missed that.
Yeah, you weren't there.
I wasn't, but
I thought Tim was there.
No, I missed that show. I think I was traveling for work, but Paul was there, and
Paul was there.
And Nick might have stood in.
But Jim, it's just great meeting you and talking to you, and please just know that whatever you're writing, everybody knows that what you truly care about is helping people quit smoking and truly bettering their lives. And I think that's no one is no one's in the dark on that note. So I appreciate everything you do for the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was Allie, myself, and Paul a year ago. Yeah.
Okay, all right. I think maybe we talked about Tim.
Yeah.
I probably was mentioned.
Of course.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah.
He had a hot date. Then.
That definitely was it, John. I was like, screw the show. I'm going out on a date.
She's hot.
Especially in the middle of the week.
Yeah, on a Wednesday. Nothing like a great date on a Wednesday night.
Wednesday date night.
Yeah. All right, Jim. Thanks again. Hey, thank you everybody out there in chat for joining us, and we will see everybody next week. Not sure who our guest will be, but we will let you guys know. Again, thank you, Jim, and we'll see everybody next Wednesday, man. Peace out.
Yeah, thank you.
Cheers.